My name is Scott Nielsen. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Secondary Schools in Poudre School District, and I'm excited to be here as we're early in this process, but we wanted to get out to Wellington. We're super excited about moving the project forward out here, and we're looking forward to some feedback tonight, giving you a chance to see where things are at with the new Wellington 612, and we're just looking forward to going through the next 2 hours with you. We'll do between Dr. Scott Elias, who's our Director of Innovative Learning, Environment, and Design. He'll be doing the majority of our presentation tonight. I'll kick things off with just a couple of slides, and then we're going to do what we think is more fun and move you around and actually give you a chance to talk with our team and to see early renderings of some of the thinking that's gone on to this point. So with that, I want to talk a little bit about how tonight will be structured. As we review some of the project, the status of where we are at, we'll talk a little bit about next steps. And like I said, we'll preview some of the drawings that are here. We will talk a little bit about where the site is. My guess is many of you know where it already will be. We'll show you that in just a minute. But what we're not ready to talk about yet, we're too early in the process to talk about site design. So we don't have that. We're still working on how how the school will sit at the site. So we're just here early to talk about what we've done with drawings of the said school. We will talk a little bit tonight about the vision, the design principles that have gone into designing the school to this point, the team that's worked on that, and we've done that in conjunction with the other 612 that will go in down near the Prospect and I-25 site. At this point, those schools are moving on parallel tracks. So we'll talk a little bit about that. What we're not going to talk about tonight are colors or building materials or what's going in here and there. It's too early in the process for that process, so we just want to make sure we set that expectation for you. We will talk about how we're thinking about using space, because as we continue to unpack understandings of how learning happens, as we've gotten a chance to go around and see what other places have done to enhance the learning environment, we've learned some things, and so we want to share some of that with you tonight as well. But what we won't be talking about tonight is what specific academics we're going to offer, what specific extracurriculars we're going to offer. All of that's too early in the process, and you want to have a leadership team that's in place. You want to move that all forward as the building comes on, and you get to see what you're going to have. So that'll happen as we unpack this over the next couple of years and start thinking about, particularly when we talk Wellington, adding the 9th and 10th grade in year one. You already have a functioning middle school, so that's different than when we talk about that site down at Prospect, where they will be bringing a whole new group of 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th or 10th graders together. Wellington, you already have a highly functioning 6th, 7th, and 8th grade school. So you'll be thinking about what are we adding for 9th and 10th. Over time, what are we adding for 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. So that's what we'll be discussing with you tonight. We're still talking about an opening date of 2022, 2023, although I can tell you we're pedaling as fast as we can to see if we can't move that up, but we'll see. Right now we still see 2022, 2023 as the date we can hit, and we don't want to promise something we can't hit. So that's the date we're still talking about. As you already heard me say, likely it will open as a 6 through 10. We'll talk about grandfathering, the ability for students to stay in schools they're already in. That impacts Wellington far less than it impacts some of the other schools in town, because your 6th, 7th, and 8th graders already are here and would likely move right to the new 612. When we talk about grandfathering, though, those students that already are attending Poudre and are going to be 11th and 12th graders at Poudre would likely stay at Poudre if they desire. And if we stay with the grandfather and open through 10th grade, they'll stay at Poudre through their senior year, because we won't have juniors or seniors here. Juniors until year 2, seniors until year 3. All of that will be decided firmly as we get closer to the opening date and we get a chance to see where we are in terms of numbers here at other sites in town. And it may end up being that those decisions are different in Wellington than they are at the other site, number dependent. So we'll make those decisions. We still have some time before we have to formally decide what we're doing with 11th and 12th graders, and in the other site, 8th graders. The school design you'll see tonight, the initial design can be for about 1,600, with a secondary expansion of take us up to about 1,800. You'll see both tonight. The overall package you'll see is 1,800 with the option to do a 1,600 student school. And as I talked about already, decisions on specific programs and activities will be made as we get closer for those 9th and 10th graders to when they're going to be actually walking through the door and experiencing the programs here in Wellington at the new 612. With that, I'm going to hand the microphone to Dr. Elias.
Thank you very much, and I'm thrilled to see so many people out here. I, as a high school student, had the opportunity to attend a brand new school and walk in the doors of that school as a 10th grader, and it was interesting because the school just went up and then we just showed up for school. So it's really exciting to be able to meet with all of you and spend some time looking at some very early versions of where we are in the process and talking a little bit about how we got here and where we see the process moving from here. My role in the district as the Director of Innovative Learning Environment Design was, first of all, to learn how to say my entire title in one breath. That was the first week. But my role is really to spend time working with the educators in the district at all levels and across all curricular areas to talk about the stuff that's going on inside the school and how we work with our architect partners to make sure that we are creating amazing learning spaces for our kids. I have been a high school, middle school principal, and I have 2 kids in the Poudre School District and a spouse who works in the Poudre School District. So we're a PSD family, and we are very excited to see these sites starting the slow process of coming to life, because it's never as quick as we want it to be, but we're excited to share a preliminary versions of what we've got today. A cross-functional team of educators in the district have been working together to get to this point for a little bit over a year. I've been on board since June. Prior to me coming on board, this team began meeting on about a monthly basis. Since August, we've actually been meeting bi-weekly. And we're spending a lot of time looking at other models around the country and around the state, looking at other innovative school designs, what's working well for kids, what are some things that maybe schools did that maybe they wish they hadn't done. So learning from the work of other districts that have traveled this path in the recent past. It's really important to us because when you look at schools, our schools that we are building with this bond process, these schools are going to serve our communities for the next 50 years and beyond. Most of the time we don't see schools get knocked down. So these schools will be here. So it's important that we're doing the work of spending time thinking about how our learners are going to access these spaces for the foreseeable future. The one thing that I learned loud and clear in about, I think, the second week I was here in the school district, I had an opportunity to come up and meet for the first time with some of the team from Wellington. And I know you can't see much up here, so I'll try and talk through it. But the one thing that I heard loud and clear on about my first visit was that whatever we do, this needs to be a part of that. So it is our goal to figure out, if we have to come out here with shovels and somebody's F-250, how we're going to incorporate that piece of the community's history into the new site design. So that was really exciting when I came out and started to really learn the history and traditions and how strong those are here in the Wellington community. So I'm not going to talk through all of these extensively, but I just want you to get a sense for how we arrived where we are now in the design process. So that community or that group of educators in the district, the design advisory group, we went forward looking at these key challenges. Really, what do we want our community to be? Because we know that a school is more than just the kids and the teachers inside the building. We're building something that will remain a part of the community for a long time in the future, and that will really be a hub for the community. What are the learning experiences we want for our students that support that vision? How will our new schools enable those visions to come into reality? And then what are the smartest strategies for implementing and achieving those visions? So those were the challenges that brought our team together and that we spent time working through. So out of those challenges emerged 12 design principles. So whatever we do, whenever we're talking about the building and how we're going to create the space for kids, there were 12 design principles that were really key to our thinking. And whenever we ran into a disagreement or maybe something that we struggled with a little bit, we would come back to these 12 principles as kind of our guideposts. The first is that all learners are accommodated. Really want to make a space that is accessible to all students, to all learners in our community. We want all of the occupants in the building to feel safe, and we want them to be safe. We want to create environments that can adapt. You know, a lot of times in schools we see areas that were originally created to be very specialized areas, but then a program goes away, or it's, you know, because it's a 20-year-old technology, we're not using it anymore. So we really went into this process wanting to make sure that we create learning environments that can adapt, because we don't know what school is going to look like. We don't know what school is going to look like in 5 years, let alone 50 years. So creating environments that can adapt. Schools where innovation is sustained and collaboration is expected, where teachers are supported, and where learning is connected. Connected both student to student, student to teacher, student and teacher to the broader community. So connections became a really important theme and a really important guiding principle for us in this process. And I think when you get a chance to get up and circulate and look at the architectural drawings that you're going to see today, you're going to see a lot of opportunities in these buildings for students to connect and just places for kids to linger and be and spend time working and collaborating together. We wanted the physical characteristics to inspire learning. I think we've all been in schools where they're not very inspiring. They feel very sterile and very institutional. And we want to make sure that our learning spaces inspire our students. Learning tools are readily available. We want students and teachers to be able to have access to the things they need to make learning real in the classroom. Of course, we want a place that our communities can be proud to send their students and where our students are proud to go. Environmental stewardship emerged as an important concept for us. We live in an incredibly amazing place, and we want to make sure that whatever we do, we're taking care of the place that has been good to us. Relationships are a keystone or a cornerstone of learners' success. Relevance, personalization, and choice are key motivators for staff and students. So those 12 foundational principles really guided us through the process. I don't have a ton more slides, I promise. They really guided us through the process, and that's where we landed on the strategies. So the strategies really for us are about how do we take those design principles and bring them to reality in a school building. So the principles sound good, but how do we articulate that in an actual physical building? One of the things that is different about this site and the school that will be built down in Prospect is that both campuses are going to be campuses that will house students in grades 6 through 12. That is a model that is used in a lot of different places around Colorado and around the country, but it is a new model in the Poudre School District. So when you look at the buildings, you will see this particular strategy in action. We have been deliberate about creating opportunities within the space for students to be together when it's appropriate, and for students to be physically not together when it's appropriate. There's tremendous advantages to having both a middle school and a high school together on the same campus. We regularly have middle school students now going to high schools to take high school classes. So there are tremendous opportunities for having them together. But we understand that is a new model. And with a new model, there are always going to be concerns and anxiety. And we've done our best to mitigate that. When you look at the building plans, you'll see those opportunities to be separate, but together. One main entrance to the school. We want everybody that comes into the school to have the experience of entering the building through a grand entryway. We don't want a separate entrance for students, a separate entrance for community. We want one grand entry. It also makes the school more secure when you have one point of entry into the building. Of course, there will be special places to enter and leave the building when we're doing extracurricular activities. If there's a play in the theater, we'll have a theater entry. If there's a basketball game or 5 going on, as you'll see, you'll have a separate entry for those basketball facilities as well. This is an interesting idea that our custodial staff may not be 100% on board with yet, but the idea that dining can extend beyond the cafeteria. If any of you have had occasion to spend any time in any of our high schools during lunchtime, when I was a high school principal, our kids were everywhere. They didn't want to be limited to the cafeteria, so instead of battling that, how can we support opportunities for our students to have lunch in more than just one location? Again, I think you'll see that when you see the draft of the plans. Wellness emphasized throughout the building, nature being important to all of us. And again, when you see the building, you're going to see the concept of nature multiple times throughout how the facility has been designed. Last slide, I promise. One of the things that was a question that we had to answer early on in the process is, do we want to create a single-story building that is maybe more sprawling, or do we want to create a multiple-story building that condenses the campus a little bit and has some different advantages? So the model that you're going to see today, the draft model, is a 2-story model. Library Media Center is not a public library. That might jump out as an odd one, but that is a question that the design team had to wrestle with. There are a lot of positives that come with having a public library on campus. There's also a lot of exposures that come from having community in and out of the campus during the day. It just creates another entry point. So we kind of weighed all of that, and at this time, we do not plan to have the library be a public library. Variety and choice versus standardization. Again, it's really about providing flexibility and providing options so that as educational trends change, the school can adapt and evolve over the next few decades. This was a really important one, and you know, as a parent of children in the schools myself, how do we create a balance between having a campus that feels open, but that is a secure place for our kids to go to school? And I think, you'll see that when you have an opportunity to look at the plans. And the final piece here, when we talked about how do we bring those visions into reality, was looking at how do we create blended and flexible common areas. Because students meet and work together and work with teachers in a variety of different places. They're not always just in a classroom. So how do we create those opportunities for kids to, you know, not just go out in the hall, but is there a place once they're out in the hall that they can be supervised but have some meaningful collaborative time? And it feels a little bit more like a lot of us when we go to work versus when we go to school. So creating those places that can be large group, small group, one-on-one instruction, just creating spaces that can be more flexible and accommodate the kinds of learning experiences that we want for our kids. I'm going to flash this up here really, really quickly, but it is so tiny. There's small versions of this at all the tables. This is essentially where the site is. It's not the entire yellow square, but for your reference, this is County Road 64, this is County Road 62, and Highway 1. It's basically this kind of brown circle here. Again, you'll see a much more concise version of that when you have the opportunity to circulate around to the tables, but that is where the site is located for the school. In addition, on the website, and there's no way you're going to see it up here and have it make any sense at all, but on the website, you'll also be able to see, it's up there now, the proposed boundaries for the new school. And it's a little bit of an eye chart because it's like one page with the old boundaries and the new boundaries, but if you squint just right, you'll see it. It'll be crystal clear. So I'm going to wrap up kind of the stand and deliver part. Our vision is that for the rest of the time, it's why we kind of created an open house for people to come in as they were available. We have 4 stations set up We have 2 emergency exits. No, we have 4 stations set up around the corners of the room. This station to my right in the back will be the bilingual station, so we'll have translation available there. But at all of the stations, we will also have feedback forms. It looks like I may have actually made enough. We're going to have feedback forms where you'll have an opportunity to reflect on what you've seen and then provide input and reflections. What have we missed? What are you still wondering about? So an opportunity for you to provide some reflections, and I take all of these back, and then they become a part of our ongoing conversations in our design advisory group. We hope that you'll spend some time connecting with the architect teams and taking a look at the plans, because we're really excited to share them with you. So thank you very much for being here tonight.